Hi，大家好，我係小 Marguerite and welcome to my little Cantonese corner。今日係2018年5月1號星期二，今日亦都係公眾假期，所以我唔使返工，我得閒同你做個 video。So hey everybody, welcome to my little Cantonese corner. Today we are talking about time and the lesson, actually it's lesson 10 in our Let's Talk Cantonese book. Lesson 9 is actually numbers. So I'm assuming for this lesson that you guys know your numbers, okay? So we're doing 而家幾點?而家幾點, which just simply means what time is it? And then the 而家 is now, right? So 而家幾點 is now what time. You could also just say 幾點 or 幾點啊 using the particle at the end for a question. So 而家幾點啊 or 而家幾點. Okay. So actually I've done this video about 5 times already, and each time I just go off on tangents and I add way too much information. So I'm going to try to restrain myself, and I thought what I'll do is I will go through the first time and just keep it very, very basic. So if you're really just learning and you don't know a lot of Cantonese at all, except your numbers of course, then you will be able to pick it up easier maybe. And then what I'm going to do is the second time I'm going to just go through a little bit and point out some things that are different or maybe a longer form that you might hear if you're in Hong Kong or somewhere, or you have already the basics down and you're like, okay, I know it's like that, but why do I keep hearing it said like that? Okay, so let's have a go and see how I do. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is at the top there, how to just say the o'clock time. Like 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or to put it in order, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and so on. So I've got a question for you. I'm using 2 o'clock, and I want you to figure out why I've chosen to focus on the 2 o'clock, okay? So 2 o'clock in Cantonese would be this one. 2, a very low tone. 2點鐘. So you're going from the bottom, the 2, and then up again to the 點, and then very high for the 鐘. So 2點鐘, just climbing the ladder, okay? So 2點鐘 is how to say 2 o'clock. Now you'll notice I put the 鐘 in parentheses because you don't really need to say it. If you just said 2點, then that's 2 o'clock, okay? And it's the same for every other hour, you know. So you could say 12點 would be 12 o'clock, right? 6點 is 6 o'clock. So that's your o'clock time. Now, if you wanted to say 2 hours or a measure, a quantity of time, then you'll notice we're using our go in the middle for the second one. So 2 hours would be 2個鐘, right? 2, same 2, 2個鐘. Okay, that would be 2 hours. 1 hour would be this 1個鐘, right? 1 is 1, 1個鐘is 1 hour, 2個鐘, 3個鐘, and so on. So why did I use 2 o'clock as the example? So if you guessed, it's because 2 in Cantonese is yi, 1, 2, 3, right? So when you learn your numbers, you learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you're probably then wondering, why is 2 o'clock not 2點鐘? It's not, because in Cantonese, 2 has an alternative way to say 2 when you're talking about like 2 of a quantity, 2 of something. Okay, so 2 o'clock uses that word, which is 2點鐘. Okay, so I guess we're kind of fortunate that Cantonese only has the 2 is the only one that has this kind of unique other word to denote the quantity or the something of 2. Right? Instead of all of them, we have to learn everything. No, 2 is the only one. Okay, so that's why I've chosen to focus on the 2 for my example. Okay, so let's move on to 2:10. So if you want to say a time 2:10, there's 2 ways in Cantonese to do it. Now, this is not just 2:10, but if you're using, here's my clock. If you're using, say, the 2, oh wow, it's 5:10. Okay, so we could use 5:10 for the example, okay? It's right on the 2. When it's right on a number of the clock, then there's a special way in Cantonese to say it, and it's pretty brilliant because as usual, Cantonese tries to shrink everything down to its simplest way. So literally, when you say 2:10 in Cantonese, you say basically 2:2. You still have your 2:點, and then you just simply add the yi. Okay, 2:點yi. Why? Because the 10 falls on the 2, right? So 2:點yi, or 5:點yi in this case, would be 5:10. 2:點yi is 2:10, okay? Now, of course, you could also say, like in English, it's 2:10, in which case it would be 2:點, the same 2 o'clock, or the 2 hour, 2:點10分. 2:點10分 is 2:10, just like it is in English, okay? So let's skip this one and go down here actually, because this is also one that falls right on a number of the clock, right? 2:05 actually falls on the number 1, which would be here, the number 1. So because it falls on the number 1, you could again say 2:1 or 2:1, okay? 2:1. So same, 2:1 is 2:05. 2:2 is 2:10. So you can imagine that 2:15 is going to be 2:3, 2:4 is 2:20, and so on and so on. But I put this one on the board as the example as well because it is 2:05. So you could say 2:1, right, which is 2:05. You could also say the 2:05 as we do in English, and that would be 2:05 分. Okay, the fun is minute, right? So, and is 5. So, fun is 5 minutes here. But you can't just say 2:05 分. You have to put the 2:05分 is the proper way to say 2:05. Okay? So now that we've got the special way that Cantonese has of saying a time that falls exactly on one of the numbers of the clock, let's go to something that doesn't fall right on 1 to 12, and that would be something like 2:13. So 2:13 in English would be 2:13, and in Chinese it is 2:13 分, 2:13分, okay? And that would be 2:13. So one more way that we have, which is down here on its own, is because when it falls on 7:30, you could say 7:30, 7:30分, which is this one, 7:30分, or you could say 7:30, 7:30. The 半 is half. So in English we would say 7:30, right? So 7:30 in Chinese they put the 7, the 點, and then the 半. So 7:30. And it's the same for all of them. 2:30 would be 2:30, or 2:30分 is 2:30. So those are the different ways to say, basically to say the time in Cantonese. So you don't really have to worry. The good thing is that in English we'll sometimes say it's 5 after, or it's 10:02. But you don't have to worry about that in Cantonese. They don't use the after and the to. Basically, they just use these ways of doing it. Okay, so now what I thought I would do is, instead of erasing my whiteboard and putting up different sentences or different times, I've written them on flashcards. So I'm going to hold them up and you tell me what time it is, okay? Here's the first one. This one would be 1:40分 or 1:08, because 40 minutes falls right on the number 8 on the clock. So 1:08 or 1:40分, 40分. Okay. This one, 11:09, 11:09 or 11:45分. (6:11, 6:11 or 6:55分. 8:3, 8:3 or 8:15分. 3:05分, 3:05 or 3:1 7:30 7:30 or 7:30 9:30 9:30 or 9:30 4:07 4:07 12:30 12:30 or you could just say 12:30 12:30 2:18 2:18 12:38 12:38 10:27 10:27 Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of, I'm going to explain a little bit of the grammar, the placement of time in a sentence. In English, time goes usually at the beginning or the end of a sentence, but in Cantonese, they put it in the middle between the subject and the verb. Will go your time. So what that looks like in a sentence is if you were to say, 我哋12點半食 lunch, right? 我哋12點半食 lunch. We'll have lunch at 12:30, or at 12:30 we're going to eat lunch. Okay? You could also, it doesn't have to be like an o'clock or a time on the clock time. It could also mean like now, later, then. It would also go in the middle. So you would say, 佢哋而家去，佢哋而家去, meaning they go now. Okay? So that's a little bit of the grammar. And there's one more thing I wanted to touch on before I go back through and explain in more detail or add a few details that you might be wondering about time. And that is how to say the time of day in terms of if it's the AM or the PM, if it's early AM, if it's the morning time, if it's afternoon, or if it's the evening. So there's different ways to say this in Cantonese, and I've picked out 4 ways that you could say it that I think are very common and that you will hear. So starting with early morning hours, 半夜 is midnight. So anything after midnight, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., up to about 5 a.m. is going to start off with the 半夜1點, 半夜2點, 半夜3點, and then you know that that's the AM time. 半夜3點 is 3 a.m. You'll notice that the sun is really shining. It's a good thing. Well, there, it's better, right? Okay. You'll notice that the placement of it is, it comes before. So we would say 2 a.m., right? Not AM 2. But in Cantonese, they put it before. So it's 半夜3點, 3 a.m. So the next one you can see is, it's really nice today outside. It's really humid and it's sunny, but it's super nice. So sorry about the glare, but so 5 a.m. to noon, morning time, you would say 上晝. You could say 上晝. That's one way to say the morning. So 上晝10點 is 10 a.m. Now when you get into the afternoon, so around noon to about 6 p.m., in English, I think in English we have this kind of debate as well. When do you stop saying afternoon and you start saying evening? So I've randomly chosen about noon to about 6 p.m., but it could be 5 p.m., whatever. But anyway, afternoon in Cantonese is 下晝. 下晝 is afternoon. So 下晝3點 is 3 p.m. or 3 in the afternoon. When you get to be nighttime, like 7 p.m. up to the midnight, nighttime is 夜晚. So 夜晚8點 is 8 p.m. in the evening. Okay? So that basically, in a nutshell, is a very condensed, it's the most common way to express time in Cantonese. So now what I'm going to do is I've erased the board and I've put up a little bit more in-depth or different kind of ways, different situations in which to use time. So I've kept up the 而家幾點, which is what time is it now, and I kept, for some reason, I kept the 兩點鐘, the 2 o'clock, and then I went on with 3 o'clock, 3 hours, which would be 三個鐘. Okay, before on the board we had 兩個鐘, now I just put 三個鐘. But what if you wanted to actually say 4.5 hours? You would then use your, well, 4, which is say. And then to say 4.5, it's say 個半鐘. So you stick the 半, which you know is half. Remember, 七點半. So 7:30. So the half is the 半, and you put it here. So say, before it's 四個鐘would be 4 hours, right? So 四個半鐘. Stick the 半 before the 鐘, and you've got 4.5 hours. Okay? So what if you wanted to say not the actual hour, full hour, or half hour, but any time in between? Well, to do that, for example, we've got 5 hours and 13 minutes. You actually change it, and you say 小時. 小時 is another way, it's actually the proper way of saying hour in Chinese. So you would then change it to be 5小時13分. Okay? 5小時 is, you could also say for 5 hours and 13 minutes. So 5 hours and 13 minutes, 5小時13分. Okay, so those are ways of saying different quantities of time. But what if you're in a conversation and you just want to say what the time is now, and it does actually fall on one of the numbers of the clock? Then you could say just simply this. In English, you pretty much have to say, they would say what time is it now? Or, well, yeah, what time is it now? And you just want to, let's see how to say this. You would have to say it's 6:20, right? You couldn't just say, oh, it's 20. You wouldn't say that in English, right? Or you wouldn't just say, the number on the clock that corresponds to 20, which is 4. You wouldn't just say, oh, it's 4. But in Chinese and Cantonese, actually, you can. And the way to do that is to say, for example, it's 6:20. We know it's already in the 6 o'clock hour, but I just want to tell you that it's 20, which you wouldn't do in English, but in Chinese, you would just say, 搭四, right? 搭四, both middle tones, 搭四, and there's the Chinese characters. 搭 is to kind of get on, like 搭車. You get on a car, get on a bus, 搭車. Yeah, that's the 搭. Is like it steps on, it falls on the 4, which is 20. So if someone's saying, what time is it now? You'd be, oh, 搭四. And then you would know it's 6:20 if it's the 6 o'clock hour. Okay, I hope that made sense. So likewise, if you have 7:35, and you all know it's 7, the 7 o'clock hour, you would just say, 搭七, right? Maybe what time does it start? And it's already like 7 o'clock. Oh, 搭七. You don't necessarily have to say, oh, it's 7點30分, or it's 7點7. You can just say, oh, 搭七. Okay? So another situation you might encounter would be when it's, in English you'd say it's almost 10, or it's almost 9. So here I've written down, when it's almost 9 o'clock, say it's exactly 8:57. So you don't want to say 8:57. You just want to say it's almost 9. To do that, you use the 就嚟, both low tones with the H there. 就嚟9點. Okay, 就嚟9點鐘. You could add the 鐘 at the end, you don't have to. 就嚟9點. So 就嚟means it's coming up to 9 o'clock. Okay, so you could use that for any time on the clock, really. Well, exact time. You wouldn't say like it's almost 2:13, right? Because that would be kind of pointless. It's almost quarter past the hour, for example. So in Chinese, it's the same. So that was one that's almost to the top of the hour, almost 9 o'clock. 就嚟9點. What if it was like 9:28? Same. You'd say 就嚟搭半, right? 就嚟搭半. Okay, it's almost to the half hour. Okay. So those are some, well, actually, I have a few cards. I took some of the cards that we used before and see if you could now say these times using the 就嚟, okay? So if you had 4:07, that is I shouldn't probably there. I shouldn't probably cover what I'm saying. This would be 就嚟搭就嚟搭二, right? 就嚟搭二. So it doesn't have to be, of course, just the hour or the half hour. It could be any time up to one of those exact times on the clock, one of the number clocks. So 4:07 would be 就嚟搭二. 2:18 you could say 就嚟搭四, right? 就嚟搭四, which would be almost 2:20. 12:38 this could be 就嚟搭八. And 10:27 if you didn't want to be so precise, you could just say 就嚟搭半. Okay? So I hope that was helpful, and that was a little bit going more in depth. Let me know what you think of this kind of format, because it just saves me from going off on tangents, and also it makes it easier to put things more in depth by having to erase the board. And for those of you who are just learning, you can focus on the first part, and if you wanted to come and learn more, then you can watch it again and learn more. Okay, so please, I guess that's all I have for today. So let me know what you think. Like my channel if you like this. Subscribe. I guess it would be subscribe to my channel, right? And then like the videos. And I will see you again here on my little Cantonese corner. Thanks so much. Bye.